Let's just start off this episode by saying this. You do not need to be on every platform. In fact, it's probably for the best if you aren't. Not only would that be super overwhelming, but it will probably also spread your time so thin that you're not able to really do good content on any platform, and instead you're just kind of doing your best to be on every platform. The reality is not every social media platform is going to be the best place for you to connect with your specific audience. There's lots of different platforms out there and they draw different audiences based on demographic, interests, content type, that kind of thing. So if you're having a hard time deciding where you should be focusing your time on posting, today we're going to break it down. We're going to discuss having a YouTube channel, starting a podcast, being on Instagram, and TikTok and Facebook, and which of these might be relevant to you depending on your very specific situation and who you're trying to reach. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Creator Club. No matter what social media platform you end up on, there is going to be one universal truth, which is you need to know your social media metrics. It is an absolute superpower for any content creator to have a good grasp on your analytics and what they're telling you about what content is performing well and what content you might want to stop including in your strategy. And in my opinion, the best place to do this is Dash Hudson, who's also the sponsor of the Creator Club podcast. Dash Hudson is a very visuals-driven analytics platform. It's based on dashboards, which are fully customizable. Plus, you can sync your Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest, Twitter, and Facebook all with your Dash Hudson account, so you can see your metrics across platforms in one user-friendly place. And Dash Hudson has just released their social media trends report for 2024. Not only does Dash Hudson keep me up to date with my own social media metrics, but they're also reporting on the industry metrics as a whole, which is so helpful for content creators and social media managers. In the report, you can check out the trends surrounding boosting content. Should you boost your posts? Which posts should you be boosting? And what results can you expect? And the different ways organic, paid, and creator content can drive results for brands. I find this kind of thing fascinating, and I know it's so helpful for people creating content, whether it's for our own brands or clients or a brand that we work for. All of this stuff is such a powerful way to have a more intentional and strategic approach to your social media content. So I highly recommend checking out Dash Hudson. And if you are a listener of the Creator Club podcast, then you can grab a free trial when you go to dashhudson.com/creator club. Before you can really choose the right platform for your content, you first need to have a really clear understanding of your brand and your audience. It's really not one size fits all. I really think it depends on the kind of content you want to make, who you're trying to reach, and also what feels most aligned for you. So before we can talk about what platform you should use and the pros and cons for each of them, we really need to settle on who your audience is and try to think about where they might be hanging out online. On this show, I feel like I've talked a lot about coming up with a sort of avatar for your ideal follower, and I really do stand behind that. I think that's a great approach when you're trying to think about who your audience is so that you can craft content that will specifically reach them, speak to them in their language, and understand their biggest struggles and their biggest goals and kind of just like the vibe or the personality of content that they're going to connect with. So if you haven't already, really take some time to think through who this potential audience member might be. And as you're asking yourself the standard questions about age, gender, where they live, what kind of work they do, what their goals are, that sort of thing, you also want to consider where do they currently spend a lot of their time online? When they open their phone to start scrolling, where do they head to first? This is going to be your strongest indicator of where you might want to start posting your content. Another equally important aspect is thinking about where you spend a lot of time online. I really believe this strongly that creators who start out as enthusiastic consumers of a particular platform's content, let's say you're a big fan of watching YouTube videos, by default, I think you are going to be a better YouTuber because you have the experience and the exposure to lots and lots of YouTube content. Same is true for Instagram or TikTok. I feel like I see this a lot where creators will try to go over to a different platform that they've just heard is a good place to be, that they should be posting content there, but they actually really don't watch a lot of content there. Whether this is a legacy YouTuber who's like, yeah, I guess I should be on TikTok now, or someone who blew up on Instagram that's thinking, oh, I really should start a YouTube channel. I see this happen a lot, and it ends up leading to videos or just content in general that doesn't quite hit the same, because you can tell the creator is not super aligned with the platform, the culture of that platform, the vibe of the content, and they don't know what sort of comes across as a good piece of content on that platform. And that is going to lead to poor content performance. To me, that this is just intuitive. It makes a lot of sense. Like if it's somebody whose entire job so far has been to write crossword puzzles, and then they're like, I'm going to do a romance novel. And then somebody who's looking for a romance novel picks it up and it's a book of crossword puzzles. You know what I mean? Like, you got to know your audience. You got to know your format. You got to know what works well. And the way that you do that is by spending a lot of time consuming that kind of content. So that's why I think, in addition to understanding where your audience is likely to spend time, you need to have a good sense of, where do you like to consume your social media content for fun? That's probably going to be the place where you're the most effective creator. Now, if you're currently in a position where you feel like the place where you like to consume content the most doesn't align with the particular demographic or audience that you want to reach, like where they're spending time, that's when it's time to get into research mode, because it's not impossible. You can become a consumer of content on a new platform. You just need to put more time and effort into that. So don't stress too much if you feel like there is a misalignment between those two answers, because you can become an avid consumer of a new platform so that you can hone your skill of creating there. Like if you're an Instagrammer who's like, I want to expand to YouTube because I know that AdSense is a really great revenue stream to have, and I know that I can build a strong community there, and people like, long form content on YouTube. Maybe you haven't spent a lot of time watching YouTube. Now's the time to do that. So you can seek out YouTubers to follow to give you inspiration, so you can start honing your artistic eye for what is a good piece of YouTube content. So where your audience is and where you like to post are very important factors. It's also important to consider how much time you have, because these different platforms require different time commitments. Because if we're honest, creating a YouTube video is going to take more time than posting 3 reels per week, for example. So some platforms are going to take a smaller time investment. Some are going to take more. Keep that in account when you're considering all these different things about where you want to post. With that groundwork laid, why don't we start to go through our list of kind of our major social media platforms that we're going to be addressing today, and talk about who tends to spend time on them and what some of the pros and cons are for each of these platforms. First up, we have my first love, YouTube. If you've been around for a while, then you'll know that I have been a major YouTube girly for many years. That's where I started my social media journey. I've always loved watching vloggers, and to me as a teenager, YouTubers were my celebrities. That's just what I was always really invested in. So I definitely have a soft spot for the platform, but I also now feel quite strongly about the many benefits that YouTube has for content creators. First, just some background info. Obviously, we all know that YouTube is a video sharing website. It's very SEO driven, but it also has a very strong recommendations algorithm that shows users new content based on their past interests and behaviors. YouTube has a very wide user base. Just think about everybody in your life. Have they ever watched a YouTube video? My grandma's watched YouTube videos. My dad watches YouTube videos. My cousins, my friends, everybody and their dog watches YouTube videos. So your audience most likely will be there in some shape or form. Though according to the stats, the majority of YouTube users are in fact aged 18 to 34. And YouTube has a very global reach. There are many different languages and cultures and countries represented on YouTube. For each of these platforms, I want to break down some of the functionality and benefits into 3 main categories. We're going to talk about engagement, discoverability, and monetization, and the opportunities that exist around those 3 on each of these platforms. So let's break that down for YouTube. When it comes to engagement on YouTube, I think YouTube is actually a really great place to foster community growth. In general, people are, I think, less likely to comment on YouTube content than people are to comment on Instagram content. It just feels like a little bit more of an investment than platforms like Instagram, TikTok, or even Facebook, where there's a little bit more of that socialness like built in. But certainly people do leave YouTube comments, so you can gain feedback from your audience in that way. And I think the main benefit of engagement on YouTube is less in the tangible metrics of engagement and more in the fact that it's longer format. You can keep someone engaged, like watching your video, longer than on many other platforms where they're just shorter form, where it's easier to scroll past. And because of that, you can build more trust, more authority with your audience. People kind of get to know you better because they're getting to see more from you rather than you just kind of passing by on their For You page. Let's talk about discoverability when it comes to YouTube. What I mean by discoverability is how easy is it to grow? How easy is it for you to be discovered by new audiences? With YouTube's search and recommendations functions, you can get your videos in front of new audiences that haven't found you yet. Search is kind of the original classic way of getting your videos out there. So optimizing your videos for SEO so that people can find your tutorials or your how-tos when they're searching for them. But there's also lots of opportunity to get seen by new audiences through the recommendations algorithm, primarily on the homepage. This is what I mentioned before about YouTube getting to know users' behaviors and interests and serving them new content based on that. So I'm getting content all the time on my homepage from new creators that I haven't seen before that YouTube is introducing me to. If you can get a handle on how to optimize some of your videos for search and some of your videos for homepage recommendations, then you'll have a really great strategy for being found on YouTube. Though generally, I will say it's a slow burn. It's kind of a slow and steady climb to get people to find your channel over time. It's not generally a blow up overnight kind of situation. Now let's talk monetization. YouTube by far has the best built-in monetization opportunities across social media because of the YouTube AdSense program. So basically how this works is advertisers pay YouTube to run ads on all channels' videos. And then when you are part of the partner program, you get to keep 50% of that ad revenue. So that's a really substantial amount that YouTube is forwarding onto their creators. Between the TikTok Creator Fund and the Instagram Reels Play bonus program, none of them even came close to giving that proportion of their revenue to content creators. So YouTube is definitely kind of the gold standard for that. But in addition to that, I think YouTube has a lot of benefits around monetization in terms of you have a full description that you can put as many links in as you want, as opposed to many platforms where you can't include links in your captions. So you can direct your audience to affiliate links or to your own products. Plus, because of that sustained attention that YouTube offers, you are able to, in my opinion, charge higher rates for brand deals on a YouTube integration than you could for, say, an Instagram reel for an audience of a similar size. At least that has definitely been my personal experience. Overall, YouTube can be an effective platform for you to get started on, kind of no matter what niche you're in or what demographic you're targeting, because lots and lots of people use YouTube. I think the main thing that you want to consider is, do you like producing longer format videos? Is that something that appeals to you? Is that something that fits into your workflow? Because if you do enjoy it and you would find it fulfilling and not like too overwhelming, there's a lot of benefits to be had from creating a YouTube channel. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about podcasting. Obviously, podcasting is another one of my personal favorites. And I think a lot of us, when we think about starting a podcast, the first thought goes to the traditional audio only approach. However, more and more, we're seeing lots of people create video podcasts. Obviously, I myself am included in that because there seems to be more and more of a market on YouTube, actually, for long form video podcasts. Plus, platforms like Spotify are now allowing you to upload a video alongside your episode. So it just seems to be growing in popularity for sure. One of the main benefits of podcasts is similar to YouTube, where you have sustained attention for a long period of time. Podcasts, out of all of the different platforms tend to have the best completion rate. So if somebody starts listening to your podcast, they're very likely to listen all the way to the end. My personal theory about this is many people listen to podcasts while they're doing something else. I like to listen to podcasts while I'm going for a walk, washing the dishes, cleaning my house, whatever. And so when I'm in the midst of doing something, I'm less likely to skip because I'm just kind of like taking in the podcast in the background. Whereas if I'm watching YouTube, I'm like watching YouTube. So if I get bored, I might watch something else. Same goes for Instagram and TikTok. So podcasts really sustain the attention of your listener or viewer for a long time. Podcasts also have a pretty diverse audience of people of all like ages and backgrounds, but primarily podcast listeners tend to be millennials and a little bit older. Though I think there is a strong and growing contingent of Gen Z podcast listeners as well. Traditionally, we've seen a lot of podcasts that are educational or like professional interview based, that kind of thing. And I think more and more we're seeing the entertainment podcast space start to grow with more comedy podcasts or lifestyle podcasts coming into the mix. So I think that's kind of an interesting development that's bringing in more younger listeners as well. Similar to YouTube, once again, podcasting has a lot of benefits around because you have your listeners' attention for so much longer. You're able to build up that authority and that trust with them in a way that short form content doesn't allow for quite so easily. So let's talk about engagement when it comes to podcasts. This one feels a little bit more dubious because we're all used to the likes, comments, the view counts across social media platforms, but podcasting is kind of different because there aren't really that many public metrics for it. When it comes to downloads, plays, listeners, that's the kind of thing that we see in our analytics platforms, but not necessarily for everybody else. So I think that means that podcast engagement feels very mysterious to the average person. The main ways that engagement is measured when it comes to podcasts is ratings and reviews on your show. And a lot of podcast creators will actually have like an accompanying social media page where you kind of see more of that back and forth between the audience and the host, because it is pretty difficult to have that exchange on typical podcast platforms because there's no comment section on Apple Podcasts, for example. So again, I think it's similar to YouTube, but even more so this way, where there's not necessarily engagement in the traditional sense of back and forth in the comment section, but there is a very engaged audience because they're listening to you, they're watching you a lot longer than on other social media platforms. Let's talk about discoverability. Discoverability is kind of another mysterious piece with podcasts. Now, of course, if you're posting your video podcast to YouTube, then you have the same benefits of discoverability that YouTube offers. On Spotify and Apple Podcasts and those kind of platforms, people are finding shows via search. Another great avenue for discoverability is getting lots of ratings and reviews on your show so that you can show up in the Apple Podcast charts, for example. Creator Club podcast is on the marketing charts on Apple Podcasts, which is always fun when I can open up the app and go to categories, business marketing, and then see the cover art there. And that is because of all the kind reviews and ratings that you all have left. So definitely, if you haven't already, take a quick moment to leave us a little rating and review because it really does help other people find the show. Monetization. When it comes to monetizing your podcast, there's not as many sort of built-in avenues the way that, AdSense on YouTube works. However, there's lots of opportunities to get brand deals, get sponsorships for podcasts, as well as direct your listeners to your own business, your own products or services, or to affiliate links. Switching gears to something very different, the next platform on our list is Instagram. To me, Instagram is all about community building. This is really the platform where you can have that one-on-one engagement, where you can message with people in the DMs, where you can share your life through your stories, and you can have conversations in the comment section. Oftentimes, creators that have an established YouTube channel or podcast will also have an Instagram to accompany it, and that is really where the most dedicated followers or viewers will go to get even more content from that creator. In terms of demographics, while there is a wide base of users on Instagram, it does tend to skew younger, between 18 to 34, and it actually has a slightly higher female user base. It's very popular among millennials, of course, and slightly older Gen Zs. And to me, the distinctive factor about Instagram is that it is very much about aesthetics and curation. Yes, there can be all types of communities on Instagram, but the one thing that really ties it together is the emphasis on visuals. Of course, you're thinking YouTube is a very visual platform too. Yes, but not in the same way that Instagram is. YouTube is visual in that you are watching videos, you're consuming visual content, but Instagram is visual in that like the value of what you're offering is kind of the visuals that you're able to offer. So I think we've seen this even in the progress of how Reels have evolved. People are all about aesthetic B-roll and text over top, and even like, you know, a curated feed from back in the day. Like these have always been baked in to the culture of Instagram. So I think that as a creator or a business owner, if you want to really thrive on Instagram, it's important that you have striking visuals to offer. Okay, what does engagement look like on Instagram? Well, like I alluded to before, I think Instagram is one of the best platforms for engaging with your community because there's so many different avenues that people can take. They can DM you. They can reply to your stories and start a DM conversation. They can talk with you in the comment section. This is a place where there is a lot of back and forth and there is a lot of discussion, way more so than with either YouTube or podcasting. Discoverability. What's on the table in terms of actually growing on Instagram? This is something that's really evolved over the past number of years since the release of Reels. Reels have really taken over in terms of the main way for creators to find new audiences on Instagram. Traditionally, the content stream on Instagram was very much about who you're already following and seeing content from them, mostly in chronological order. But as of the release of Reels, the Reels feed plus recommendations in the main home feed are starting to help creators get in front of new audiences in a more organic way. So the best way to really be discovered on Instagram is through utilizing Reels and by also getting your feed content recommended on new people's feeds. And really, the strategy with both of these things is just making content that's very valuable and engaging and visually striking. Definitely the aesthetics, the curation of beautiful things is an important aspect of Instagram strategy. As for monetization, the Reels Play bonus program has actually officially been retired. So there's no current way that Instagram is directly paying content creators. However, there have been, some features here and there that are available to some people, but not everybody. Example being subscriptions. So that's kind of like having an exclusive membership built into your Instagram account. So people pay, say, $5 a month to be subscribed to your account, and then they get to see exclusive content from you. So then you could post something that's for subscribers only. So I believe that feature is only available in certain countries and to certain creators, but it is a path for monetization on Instagram. The paths that most content creators are utilizing when it comes to making money on Instagram, it's brand deals, it's affiliate marketing, it's sending your traffic to your own digital products and to your own services. That's kind of the main way that people are making money off of Instagram. Okay, we had to talk about TikTok. Should you be posting on TikTok? Well, TikTok is a absolutely massive platform that has exploded over the past number of years. The demographics have certainly grown and evolved. It's not just preteens dancing anymore. However, it does still skew on the younger side, with the majority of users being aged 16 to 24. Obviously very popular among Gen Z and has quite a global reach, though it is notable that there are several countries that have banned TikTok, and so it's not available there, India probably being the biggest example. There's lots of opportunity for engagement on TikTok as well. You've got the comment section. The DMs with people that you kind of don't really know, I think, are on the limited side. Instagram seems to be more of the place to have those conversations because there is the functionality of replying to a creator's story. However, there's conversations in the comments of TikTok. It's just that it might not necessarily be from people that follow you. One of the biggest distinguishing factors of TikTok is that because of the For You page and the way the algorithm works, your content is not necessarily being pushed to people that actually follow you. It's being pushed out there onto the For You pages of people that might be interested in that specific piece of content, which means that having a certain number of followers on TikTok does not guarantee a certain amount of reach on your future content. So it feels a little bit more volatile for that reason. And it also means that creators tend to have a lower reach than you might expect compared to their follower count, and also less engagement, particularly from their followers. However, where TikTok feels kind of low on the engagement side, the community building side, it is highly advantageous on the discoverability side. That is really, I think, what sets TikTok apart from many of these platforms, is that you can go viral overnight. And this happens to people all the time. People who are not even trying to be content creators, they just filmed a funny video of their cat. It can all of a sudden blow up. And so this whole dynamic, it has pros and cons, right? Like, you might be able to get more reach more quickly through posting on TikTok because you might be able to craft a video that really goes viral, but you might not be able to actually translate that into a community that cares about you and is going to purchase from you, use your affiliate links, or help you get brand deals or any of that. So that's why I would say approach TikTok with caution. I think it's helpful if you approach TikTok strategically and also have a place to direct people from TikTok. TikTok can be a great way to get in front of more people, but I wouldn't rely on it as your main platform for consistently reaching your community for these reasons of how discoverability and engagement, there's kind of like a balance there, where platforms where you can't get discovered by brand new people as easily tend to mean that your existing community who's already subscribed to you, they're going to see your content more consistently because they're not being thrown stuff from new people all the time. So then it means people who are established can kind of continue to reach their audiences. But when you have higher discoverability, it means that everybody's kind of more on an even playing field because the algorithm is just throwing out different content to people based on their interests, not based on who they're following. So it just means that you can't depend on always reaching your audience with that kind of a platform. When it comes to monetization on TikTok, historically we had the TikTok Creator Fund that's now been discontinued. However, it was only ever available in, I believe, the US, UK, Germany, and France. And now it's going to be retired in those countries, and they're rolling out the new creativity program, which remains to be seen exactly what that will look like, but it will only be available in certain countries. Nonetheless, that was never a really big moneymaker for many creators. Like, people were earning like a few cents per 1,000 views kind of thing. So really the most effective way for monetizing on TikTok is the same as other platforms: brand deals, affiliate links, and sending people to your own products and services. Let's round this out by mentioning the great aunt, shall we say, of the social media family, Facebook. Many of you who are listening may be thinking that like Facebook is like dead and not somewhere that you're spending any time or that you're investing in. But if you haven't had those Gen Z thoughts running through your mind, like I have, I must admit, you might be considering reaching your ideal audience on Facebook. And it is true, if you want to reach people that are a little bit older, then Facebook can be a good place to do it. Basically, if you're targeting people older than millennial and up, Facebook is probably where they're hanging out. There's good opportunities for engagement there. There's some discoverability through different newer Facebook features like Facebook Reels and such. And when it comes to monetization, you can do brand deals just like you can on any other platform, or you can utilize the Facebook Shop feature. So that's the rundown on a bunch of social media platforms. Obviously, we didn't have time to get into everything. Twitter and LinkedIn are pretty major ones that we didn't talk about. And Pinterest is also an entirely other conversation, which I wouldn't even really fully classify as a social media platform because it functions so differently in an overall content strategy. So if you have questions about any of those three platforms, or maybe you want to see a future episode all about Pinterest and using Pinterest for your content business, you can reach out and let me know. You can send me a DM at Katie Steckley, or you can message the Creator Club podcast account. I'll hear from you either way, and we could do a future episode all about any of those. I really, really believe, though, no matter which of these platforms you use, because they all have their own pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, it's really important that you go back to those basics that we talked about at the beginning, that you really consider who your audience is, where they're spending time, and where you like to spend time, because it's all about making content creation easier for you. When you approach content creation in a way that aligns with your existing habits, your social media consumption habits, the way that you like to create, the formats that you enjoy creating, it just makes everything so much easier. And when it feels easier, you can be more consistent. And when you can be more consistent, you will see more growth and more success. So it all ties in to this holistic approach to a successful social media content strategy. Another piece of a holistic social media content strategy is understanding your analytics. And the best way to do that is by using Dash Hudson. So just a quick reminder, Creator Club listeners can get a free trial of Dash Hudson, my favorite social media analytics platform, when you go to dashhudson.com/creator club. So make sure you go check that out. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you being here. And I will catch you in the next episode. Bye.